It was a warm summer evening when I set out on my road trip from Chicago to Denver. The sun was beginning its descent, casting a golden hue across the landscape. The open road stretched out before me, a ribbon of possibility winding through the heart of America. I was eager for adventure, seeking a respite from the monotony of my everyday life. Little did I know, the adventure I was about to embark upon would be one I would never forget. As night fell, a sense of unease began to creep in. The highway, once bustling with cars, was now eerily deserted. The occasional truck rumbled past, but for the most part, I was alone. I glanced at the fuel gauge, less than a quarter tank left. I needed to find a rest area soon to refuel and grab a bite to eat. It wasn't long before I saw a sign for a rest area a few miles ahead. Relief washed over me. I drove on, the headlights cutting through the darkness, illuminating the sign, "Rest Area," to miles. The exit loomed, and I took it, following the winding road to what seemed like salvation. As I approached, the rest area came into view. It looked like it had seen better days. The buildings were dilapidated, and the gas pumps seemed ancient. I parked my car and stepped out, the air thick with an unsettling silence. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the place. I walked towards the main building, hoping to find a restroom and a vending machine. The door creaked open, and I stepped inside. The interior was dimly lit, the flickering fluorescent lights casting ominous shadows. The smell of mildew and decay permeated the air. I made my way to the restroom, my footsteps echoing through the empty hall. The restroom was in a sorry state, cracked tiles, broken mirrors, and graffiti-covered walls. As I washed my hands, I heard a faint sound, almost like a whisper. I dismissed it as my imagination and quickly left. Outside, I headed to the vending machines. They were old but functional. I grabbed a soda and a snack, then returned to my car. As I settled in, ready to continue my journey, I noticed something strange. There was a figure standing at the edge of the parking lot, barely visible in the darkness. I squinted, trying to make out who it was. It seemed to be a woman, her long hair flowing in the breeze. She stood there, motionless, watching me. A chill ran down my spine. I quickly started the car and pulled out of the parking lot, my heart pounding in my chest. As I merged back onto the highway, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the woman following me. But the road behind me was empty. For the next hour, I drove in silence. The events of the rest area were playing in my mind. The unease grew stronger, gnawing at me. Just as I was starting to calm down, my car began to sputter. The engine coughed, then died. I coasted to the side of the road and tried to restart it, but it was no use. The car was dead. I grabbed my phone to call for help, but there was no signal. I was stranded, alone, in the middle of nowhere. Panic set in, but I forced myself to stay calm. I needed to find help, and fast. I remembered passing a small town a few miles back. Maybe I could walk there and find someone. I grabbed a flashlight from the glove compartment and set off, hoping to reach the town before it got too late. The walk was long and arduous, the night growing colder with each passing minute. The flashlight's beam cut through the darkness, revealing the road ahead. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, but there was no one there. The footsteps stopped, and the silence was deafening. I quickened my pace, my heart racing. The footsteps resumed, this time closer. I broke into a run, fear propelling me forward. The footsteps matched my pace, always just behind me. I dared not look back, focusing on reaching the town. After what felt like an eternity, I saw the faint glow of streetlights in the distance. Relief washed over me as I stumbled into the town. It was small, with a few houses and a gas station. I headed to the gas station, hoping to find someone who could help. The gas station was old, but the lights were on. I pushed open the door, and a bell chimed, announcing my presence. An elderly man stood behind the counter, his eyes widening in surprise. "Are you all right, miss?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. I need help, I gasped, trying to catch my breath. My car broke down, and there's someone following me. The man's expression changed from concern to fear. You need to leave, now. What? Why? This place, it's haunted. People go missing around here. You're lucky you made it this far. I stared at him, disbelief and fear mingling in my mind. Haunted? What do you mean? The man sighed, his eyes filled with a deep sadness. Years ago, a woman was murdered at that rest area. They never found her killer. Since then, people have reported seeing her ghost, wandering the highway, luring people to their deaths. My blood ran cold. The woman at the rest area, it must have been her. What do? I whispered, feeling helpless. You need to leave town and never look back. There's a mechanic down the road. He might be able to help with your car. But be careful. The ghost is relentless. I thanked the man and hurried to the mechanic's shop. It was a small, run-down building, but the lights were on. I knocked on the door, and a middle-aged man opened it. I need help, I said, quickly explaining my situation. The mechanic, whose name was Jack, nodded. I'll help you, but we need to hurry. It's not safe here at night. Jack grabbed his tools, and we drove back to my car in his truck. The drive was tense, every shadow seeming to hold a threat. When we reached my car, Jack quickly got to work. I stood by, flashlight in hand, scanning the darkness for any sign of the ghost. As Jack worked, I heard the footsteps again. They were faint at first, then grew louder. Jack, hurry, I urged, my voice trembling. I'm almost done, he replied, his hands moving swiftly. The footsteps were right behind me now. I turned, and there she was, the ghostly woman, her eyes filled with sorrow and malice. She reached out towards me, her mouth opening in a silent scream. Jack, I screamed. Done, he shouted, slamming the hood shut. Get in there. We jumped into the car, and Jack started it. The engine roared to life, and we sped off, leaving the ghost behind. I watched in the rearview mirror as she faded into the darkness. We drove for miles, not stopping until we reached the next town. Jack parked the car and turned to me. You're safe now, but be careful. There are places in this world where the dead don't rest. I nodded, gratitude and fear overwhelming me. Thank you, Jack. I don't know what I would have done without you. He smiled, a weary, knowing smile. Just take care, Sarah, and remember, Semites, it's better to keep driving, no matter how tired you are. I took his advice to heart. The rest of my journey was uneventful, but the experience left a mark on me. The memory of that haunted rest area, the ghostly woman, and Jack's warning stayed with me. I realized how fragile life is and how thin the veil between the living and the dead can be. From that night on, I vowed to be more cautious, to listen to my instincts, and to never take my safety for granted. The highway may hold many adventures, but it also harbors its own share of horrors. And sometimes, those horrors are all too real. Weeks turned into months, and life slowly returned to normal. The haunting experience on that lonely highway began to fade into a distant memory, though it never truly left me. I resumed my daily routine, but a part of me remained hyper-aware, constantly looking over my shoulder, always on guard. One evening, as I was finishing up some work at home, my phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number. Normally, I wouldn't answer such calls, but something compelled me to pick up. Hello, I answered hesitantly. Is this Sarah? A familiar voice asked. Yes, who is this? It's Jack, the mechanic. I hope you're doing well. I was surprised but also relieved to hear from him. Jack, it's good to hear from you. I've been meaning to thank you again for everything you did. No need to thank me. I just wanted to check in on you. See how you were holding up after that night. I'm doing okay. I think it's been a challenge, but I'm managing. How about you? Jack paused before replying. I'm fine. But there's something you should know. After that night, I did some digging. I couldn't get the image of that ghostly woman out of my head. I found out more about her. My heart skipped a beat. What did Jill find? Her name was Emily. She was a young woman traveling alone, much like you were. She stopped at that rest area and never made it out alive. The police believe she was attacked by someone who followed her there. Her body was found days later, but her killer was never caught. A chill ran down my spine as Jack continued. Her spirit is trapped there, seeking justice. But there's more. I found out that those who encounter her often experience strange phenomena afterward. It's like she's trying to reach out, to communicate something. Communicate what? I asked, dread filling my voice. I'm not sure, but I think she's trying to tell her story, to find peace. I've heard of others who've seen her, and they all report feeling a strong sense of sadness and desperation. I believe she's looking for someone to help her find closure. Why are you telling me this, Jack? Because, Sarah, I think you might be able to help her. You experienced something profound that night, and maybe, just maybe, you can give her the justice she seeks. I was silent, absorbing his words. The thought of helping Emily's spirit was daunting, but it also felt like the right thing to do. What do you suggest? Teresa, paranormal investigator I know. Her name is Laura. She's dealt with cases like this before. I think you should meet her. She might be able to guide you through this. After a long pause, I agreed. All right, Jack, I'll meet her. A few days later, I met Laura at a small cafe in town. She was a petite woman with an air of confidence and a kind smile. We sat down, and I recounted my experience in detail. Laura listened intently, her expression serious. When I finished, she nodded. I've heard of Emily's case. It's one of the more tragic ones I've come across. I believe she's stuck in a loop, reliving her final moments, unable to move on. How can I help her? I asked, feeling a mix of fear and determination. We need to go back to the rest area, Laura said. We need to communicate with her, find out what she needs. It's risky, but it's the only way. Despite my fear, I agreed. We planned to go that weekend, hoping to finally bring peace to Emily's restless spirit. The drive back to the rest area was filled with anxiety and anticipation. Jack had offered to come with us, and I was grateful for his support. As we approached the dilapidated buildings, the air grew thick with an oppressive energy. Laura set up her equipment: temp meters, digital recorders, and a spirit box. The atmosphere was tense, the silence almost deafening. We started inside the main building, where I had first seen Emily. Emily, Laura called out gently. We're here to help you. Can you hear us? For a moment, there was nothing but the hum of the equipment. Then, the EMF meter spiked, and a faint voice crackled through the spirit box. Help me. The voice was barely a whisper, but it was there. Laura continued. Emily, we want to help you find peace. Tell us what you need. The temperature dropped suddenly, and a cold breeze swept through the room. The spirit box crackled again, and we heard, Justice, find him. Find who? Laura asked. Killer still there. The voice was clearer this time, filled with anguish. My heart pounded as I realized the gravity of Emily's words. Her killer was still out there, perhaps still preying on unsuspecting travelers. Laura looked at me, her expression grave. We need to uncover the truth, Sarah. Emily's killer must be brought to justice. Over the next few weeks, Laura, Jack, and I delved deep into Emily's case. We scoured old police reports, interviewed locals, and pieced together the fragments of her story. The more we uncovered, the more horrifying the truth became. Emily had been a college student, traveling home for the summer. She was last seen alive at the rest area, where witnesses reported seeing a suspicious man loitering around. Despite extensive investigations, the police never identified the man. We followed every lead, every clue. Our efforts eventually led us to a retired detective who had worked on Emily's case. He was reluctant to talk at first, but Laura's persistence paid off. The case haunted me for years, the detective confessed. We had a prime suspect, but we never had enough evidence to convict him. His name was Robert Miller, a drifter with a violent past. He disappeared shortly after Emily's murder. With this new information, we tracked down Robert Miller, who was living in a nearby town under an assumed name. We gathered enough evidence and presented it to the authorities, who reopened the case. Robert Miller was arrested and charged with Emily's murder. The trial was a long and grueling process, but in the end, justice prevailed. Miller was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. The night of the verdict, Laura, Jack, and I returned to the rest area one last time. We set up the equipment and called out to Emily. "Emily, we found him. He's going to pay for what he did to you," Laura said softly. The air grew still, and a sense of peace settled over the place. The spirit box crackled to life one final time. "Thank you, Free." Tears filled my eyes as I realized Emily's spirit had finally found peace. The oppressive energy lifted, replaced by a serene calmness. Life slowly returned to normal after that. The rest area was eventually demolished, and a memorial was erected in Emily's honor. Her story touched many lives, a reminder of the importance of justice and the resilience of the human spirit. As for me, I continued my journey, both on the road and within myself. The experience had changed me, instilling a deep sense of empathy and a desire to help those in need. I became involved in various advocacy groups, working to support victims of violence and raise awareness about unsolved cases. Every now and then, I think of Emily and the night I encountered her spirit. It serves as a reminder of the thin veil between the living and the dead, and the enduring power of justice and compassion. And so, my story comes to an end, but Emily's legacy lives on. In the stillness of the night, when the world holds its breath, I remember her and the journey we took together to bring her peace.